Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Hello, everyone.
What a kind, soft-spoken greeting to the world. They've been met. And Gret. Is that the past tense of greet?
Gret, I don't think that. I'm pretty positive Gret is not a word.
They've been Gret. I have regret after that statement. How you guys doing? It's been a while. I feel like we've had a lot of offshoots and, you know.
Beth Moore, Mark, and Dawn, and Carl. Yeah, it's been a
while. Good to be back together.
Yeah, you guys have been going through.
I'll say it.
Say less. That's kind of the new phrase I've been saying that I heard from kids.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Does that mean you agree?
It's anything to do with pay less?
Remember say less is, yeah, like
shoes there for cheap.
Yes, like yes, but say less. I've been learning a lot of new phrases lately.
You should have introed with that then.
Like the Sigma face. You know the Sigma? It's like I am him is kind of a thing that people say. Like Sigma is like the new alpha.
Sigma's good.
Yeah.
Sigma's bad. Ohio is bad.
Yeah, like
is bad. Skibbity is bad.
Yeah, so
that is bad.
Could go on and on and on.
I looked that up the other day.
Yep. Phantom tax. Watch out for the phantom tax. Anyways, just don't Google. It's fine.
Don't Google anything.
It's just if you hear those words, that's pretty common vernacular in Gen
words
Alpha.
with friends.
Yeah. Gen Alpha and young Gen Z.
Do they know how to even leave a voicemail? Do you think Gen Z knows what a voicemail is?
Did you in college learn the power of a transition, Alex?
I did.
Did you take a
Grace
class?
University.
Yeah.
Actually, and I
feel like I just got whiplash, so let's just go for it.
I had to take it twice, that class, the power of transitions. But here is our voicemail
Pivot.
for the week.
Comfortable, and I was hoping you could help me.
And I started that too late.
Hey, podcast party people. It's spring. It's soccer season. My kids are playing soccer with Upward through CCC. Great program. But there's something that makes me uncomfortable, and I was hoping you could help me. I don't understand parent text chain etiquette. The team that one of my sons is on, the text chain, they're sending images, they're sending likes, they're sending funny GIFs. I wasn't aware that people over 30 could send the funny GIFs in text chains.
Surprise.
Please, somebody is doing this wrong, and it's either them or me, and I know who I'm betting on. Can you explain parent text chain sports etiquette? Thanks.
Russ, you're doing it wrong. Just going to put that out there.
I'm on Team GIF, by the way.
GIF. It's a GIF.
GIF.
It's a graphical interface.
It was GIF too.
It's not GIF.
I prefer GIF.
I think GIF is
I like
peanut
GIF
butter.
peanut butter, yeah, for sure. But no one's confused when I'm like, hey, someone put a GIF on my phone, and instead of GIF, they might think they're smearing peanut butter.
Well, hear me out. Here's the reason that these soccer moms and dads are sending them, because moms like you choose GIF.
Okay, no.
And so they choose GIFs on the email text.
Austin, turn it off.
Yeah,
turn it off, Austin. We're done.
Alex, you said all your words for the allotted time.
What are your thoughts on this? This is. I've been in the same peculiar situations. What are your thoughts on these text parent chains?
I think that it is a way for people to connect in this day and age. It is a struggle to get together and have conversations sometimes. And so I think this is like baseline, and even more than baseline, connection. And I also think if you don't like it, like in the nicest way possible, you can also mute your text chain. But I do think it's a way of like connection.
Yeah.
I overthink, and it's because of you two now, actually, about my reacts in said sporting text messages, because I know that I have a Android, and so I know it comes up different. So now I'm like overthinking, like, oh, if I heart something or if I give a thumbs up, what am I doing to that said text chain?
The thread, yeah.
So I overthink it too much, but
I'm pretty passionate about this because I've coached many a teams.
You've probably started a few.
No, I haven't
chains.
Actually.
Really?
I
am
very anti text chain for sports teams. So there's a few things where you can actually create, I'm more about people having anonymity unless they give you their phone number. And so like I coach upward teams, and I don't just put all these parents in a group thread because they didn't say they signed their kid up for a sport. They didn't give me permission to hand out all the parents' phone numbers. And then nobody knows whose phone number it is. You don't even know who you're reacting to half the time in it. Then it's awkward if you say, wait, which parent is... You don't even know the parents on these teams, for the most part. I'm in one of these with another organization I'm a part of that I didn't give anybody permission to put my phone number into. And even though I mute it, it's like, yeah, these people are making comments and sending GIFs and all this, like these things that they think are funny. And I'm like, I don't know... Maybe if I knew who was sending it, I would know it's funny. So to me, there's a privacy issue. And that's probably because I don't want my phone number shared with just anybody and everybody, because there's been instances in the past, mostly ministry related, where people have gotten a hold of my phone number and...
Just went to town.
No, they just... Like, I want to help minister to people, but then they'll send... There's just appropriate avenues for that, and not everybody should have my phone number. And maybe call me a jerk, a mean person. I have an office phone. I have an email. I have a lot of ways you can get a hold of me. But my personal phone number, if I haven't given permission for somebody to have it, and then that's my thought on the text chain etiquette.
Okay,
so
let me take out the phone aspect, because I will say that all my sporting goods.
You need to go ride that Ferris wheel at Shields today,
I do.
Jess.
Yes, I do. All my sporting group texts are through GroupMe. So you sign up and show your name.
Yeah,
and you can
numbers,
still do all the same things.
Yeah.
And
Your phone
you
number's
all
also
like
attached to
consent,
your
like you have to sign up to be in the group. So that's what I was thinking.
I'm just more hung
Same
up on the using GIFs in the conversation, because I would argue that GIFs are very much a 30-year-old plus thing. Like if you look at Gen Z, they're not using GIFs in their conversations at all. They're maybe using emojis, but like every time I send a GIF to someone under 30, I go, oh, should have done that. They probably look at me like I'm a grandpa now. So I would say to Russ, if you're over 30, you should be using GIFs, because that's the language.
Send more.
That's the language of your generation.
Send more.
A GIF is worth 10,000 words. If a picture is worth 1,000, I can say a lot more, in an animated GIF. But I would say young people are not using GIFs. They might use a meme, like a static image, but mostly emoji. So sorry to break it to you, Russ.
Hot takes.
Yeah.
Jarrett, do you use?
He said no.
Yelling thing.
Jarrett's
He was
in the room,
confirming what
and he's
Eric was
under
saying.
30. So I was just trying to get some thoughts on that. If he's agreeing.
Austin, do you use GIFs in your texting?
Austin does.
Yeah.
So everyone over 30 in the room does.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's my point. Like, yeah, over 30.
Our very small poll.
Yeah.
But do you
has
want to
proven
be
this right.
in the thread? Do you want to be in the thread?
Oh,
with
absolutely
everybody
not.
else?
I mute that thing immediately, and I don't look at it, and I ignore it completely. I don't pay attention, and if there's valuable information in it, I'm like, whoops.
Yeah,
I don't know, because I don't like my phone blowing up. I'm the same with you. Like, it needs to have its own avenue, like its own lane. Like I need an app where that's happening, or like a place where I just know I can go to that. That's preferably searchable, so I can find the information I need, and not. I don't want it just blowing up my. Yeah, no, I don't. But then again, I get in trouble, because then usually Christina will have access to that thread or something, and then she'll have to be more responsible to find the things, because I've been ignoring it. But
problem solved. There you go, Russ. There you go. From a upward coach himself. Let me know who's coaching your team, and I'll shut it down.
I've been, but most of the
Ooh.
sports I've been a part of have used like Remind or something like that, where it's like for sporting
Like a
events,
tool,
and like it's an app for that,
Yeah.
and the coach can communicate that way, and the parents aren't really meant to be communicating with each other as much, but you can. So
Upward does have that feature on through their app and a whole team page and things like that, but I think it's just more convenient.
Well, and it's like, I want to know, you want to know when your kid's supposed to be there, when it's over, when there's practice, like what else?
Yeah.
I mean, who's
and when you
bringing
have multiple
snacks,
kids,
I guess, but
it can be difficult.
But I don't need to know all the other drama and all that, that in that space anyways.
But if you didn't know and have access to the drama, would you feel left out?
No.
You just need to know someone that's paying full attention to give you the details.
I just need to know when to do the thing. That's all that I'm there for, right? Not to get into the drama about, oh, I can't believe that ref made that call. Like, who cares? These are kids playing sports. They're supposed to be having fun. Chill out. That's what I'd say to that. All right. Yeah. Thanks for your call, Russ. Hopefully we made that clear. I think really after that conversation, you could just land anywhere you wanted on your opinion, and it can be your opinion, because I think we all kind of, except for on the gift thing.
Yeah.
That's a 30-year plus move right there. All right. Up next, we are going to be talking about social media in a way, but more specifically asking the question, is following an influencer on social media an automatic endorsement of that person? So stay tuned for that. Okay, everybody, I have a question for you. Who are you following out there? Huh? Who are you following on social media? And what does that say about you? That's the question we're asking today. Is a follow equal an endorsement? If I
follow them and like it? Is that another level?
What are you talking about?
Like if I'm following someone
and like their content,
and then I heart their content,
yeah.
or comment.
That's something too.
That's investment.
I think based on social media and the way that the algorithms work, we know that when I follow someone, then that content can be recommended more regularly to a person that is friends with me. And yeah, they're going to see if you liked it. You're going to show up first on that list of people who liked that video or reel or TikTok or post on Facebook or on X/Twitter. So yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and that's what we're kind of setting out to answer in some way today. What that means. Is it an endorsement of that person? Does that automatically mean you like that person? Will people, judge you because they may think you're helping this person gain more clout, or you're like we said, endorsing them? Any other thoughts there on like how we want to set this conversation up?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially this isn't necessarily going a political direction, but in a political cycle kind of year, there's a lot of people that you can follow that have a bent or a thought politically, and that you might, and I've definitely done this. Like I have seen, because it's been recommended to me because of how you were saying the algorithm works. Like I've seen people that I don't follow, but it populates in my, maybe you'll like this because a person that I know and I do follow liked it. And so then it'll feed it to me, or they've commented on it. And so then I've had in my mind, oh, I have an opinion of that influencer or that politician or that person. And then I've found myself surprised a few times and probably even judging at some level.
Yeah.
Oh, ew.
Yeah.
And found my own.
You got the ick.
Yeah, my own thought process. Like, I didn't think that person. So, in my own mind, I've probably taken it as that person's in some way endorsing or likes or enjoys that person as a whole. Maybe not even just that piece of content somebody puts out. And so, it's something I hadn't thought cognitively about. But then once we've talked about it a little bit more, I'm like, yeah, I've definitely been on probably the judged side and the judging side on
both those.
Who people follow and is that a quote unquote endorsement. But I know also, like, I follow several people that I don't like or agree with on purpose because I want to learn from them. I want to see what they're putting out there. I want to just know. I mean, even part of being a part of this podcast, I want to know what's happening in culture. Yeah. So then I have responses to it when people ask. So it is interesting.
Yeah, it's like the idea of, I mean, after 2020, we heard the term echo chamber a lot more, but I don't think people realized how much they were creating that by only following and listening to people that they agreed with. And so I know for my social media accounts, you'd probably see all sorts of people that I follow. Do I like their content? Probably not, but I am curious, and I think for me it makes the conversation then is, well, it to me it's more of a unifying thing in a lot of ways, because I'm looking at it from a standpoint of, okay, this person might say 10 things, and out of those 10 things maybe I can agree with 2 of them or whatever, but I do think what it does is it starts for me, it kind of humanizes those people a little bit. They're not just a talking point in some headline or something like that. They're not just a soundbite, but it's like, okay, yes, maybe this person does this thing wrong, or they're not correct in this way, but here they are. They do have opinions that, I mean, I could agree with, and it's not about endorsement. It's more about like you said, Alex, learning from each other and trying to understand people's perspectives, because that's one of the things that we've set out to do on this podcast. That's one of the things that I'm personally extremely passionate about, is just understanding people's lot in life. Like, why are you the way you are? Why do you act that way? Why do you say the things you say? Why do you behave the way you behave? Why do you believe the things that you believe? And I think and it goes so far beyond even just culture in general, but you get into subcultures, whether it could be anything, but even specifically like Christian subcultures, people follow this person because this, for whatever reason, but they align with their personal religious beliefs. Mm-hmm.
And social media is so young in comparison to so many other things that we've grown up with. And so even the fact that we're having this conversation, it almost gives me whiplash a little bit, because it's something that we haven't had to consider, but it's because maybe we haven't put as much awareness into other people are paying attention to what I like or who I follow. Because originally, like when you set up like a social media account, you think like, oh, this is private. Like I'm going to be the one like checking in on people and like looking at their walls and like, what are they posting? And then this is kind of the backside of that, where it's like, oh, now people are also seeing like who I follow, what I'm liking, what I'm commenting. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, what's our awareness do? Does it changes, unfortunately, like for the good or the bad, like how people view us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and undoubtedly the monetization of a lot of these platforms, which has grown more and more, which has made a lot more people want to be influencers and follow, like be YouTubers and things like that, isn't necessarily, it's partly because they want to put out content and those things, but there's also a real way to have a sustainable living by doing this kind of stuff. And so there's people that do this with good intentions, and there's also people that put hot takes out there all the time because they know if I put a hot take out there, clickbait, whatever it is, that I have potential to make money off of this. And so that adds a whole nother string of things. Am I, at the end of the day, supporting by watching, by even, there's times I'll watch somebody and like, I can't believe they said that, and then I'll share it with a friend, I'll DM it on Instagram or whatever. Right. And so I'm getting that view count up, and at the end of the day, putting more money in their pocket and raising an awareness around things that necessarily I don't
even when
support.
You share something, that tells the algorithm this is valuable content to Alex. So I'm going to show it to him more, and I'm going to show it to people in his friend group.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the monetization thing also maybe brings up a little bit of an ethical quandary, where you're asking, okay, not only am I platforming this person, but they're profiting off of the conflict that they're creating, whether that is, spreading misinformation or their hot takes that could be potentially hurtful if people are building their worldviews based on what this influencer is saying, and now they're profiting off of it too. They're not just gaining influence, but they're profiting financially, which then ultimately turns into more influence, the more resources that the person has. So I think it's a legitimate question, and I think it's something that we don't, like you said, Jess, I think that's a really good point. Early on social media, we didn't really this wasn't something we wouldn't have thought we had to think about. And now it is much more prevalent, because I think the standpoint for a lot of people would be don't follow people like that. If they have a bad past, they have a bad message, whatever that is, just you shouldn't follow them because of the way it looks. I think maybe working at a church, we're more maybe attuned to that in certain aspects, because we're like, okay, well, how people might be more, there might be more scrutiny applied to a pastor. So like, who's Alex following? I know. But yeah, where does that, go ahead, Jess.
I don't know. I'm like thinking, okay, even thinking about the word support. So like if somebody follows, and we're not even going to say like if you follow somebody that maybe you don't agree with or is controversial or something, in a way, black and white, that is in some way supporting that thing.
Yeah.
But does that mean that at the end of the day, and this is where it gets gray, like, do I actually like support that person, back up their belief systems and that? So like, it feels like it moves from like this black and white, like, yes, I support them, but it moves into this gray area where it's like, yeah, what does it mean to actually be supportive of something? Because like, if I'm looking at, like, we're all talking about, hey, we follow people that maybe we don't necessarily agree with or like, because I know we've all done that, but it's like, hey, we want to know what these people are saying, because it's to stay relevant and to be able to have these types of conversations. In some way, we support them by, oh, we have one more follower or something like that. But I feel like it moves black and white to gray, where we have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we also try to, we can leverage in some ways our follow or things like that by saying, now I'm going to unfollow you. And there's some pretty loud unfollowers sometimes, which is entertaining. Or, you know, people will post something and they're like, I posted that and 150 people unfollowed me. And that says that I took a right stand, and I don't care how many people unfollow me for this. And it gets into that whole hot take kind of society. And this probably were things happening in the past, but maybe not at this level. I mean, going to a movie, like there'd be people that would go see maybe a movie that necessarily they wouldn't support, or like as a parent, sometimes I'll watch a movie first before letting my kids watch it. Or in the past, you know, maybe buy a magazine or other pieces of content that were out there, a CD, listen to a song, without feeling like I was directly, I guess, supporting that person. And so now, because of the monetization and some of those things,
I think when you get into like Hollywood and things like that, people don't realize the ripple effects that has. There may be an actor that you're upset with after a movie comes out and you go, I'm not going to support that actor because of something else they did. But then that movie wasn't just made by that actor. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are employed to make that movie, whether it's, graphic artists and set designers and costume designers and editors and copy editor. I mean, just everything you could imagine. These people who just have everyday type jobs are then affected by, lack of support in their industry or whatever. So, I mean, that's the stuff where it is tough because you don't know, and they're not necessarily supporting the actor. I mean, they are by supporting the thing that is Hollywood, but yeah, a lot of that, I mean, that gets in, I mean, it's even like veganism, for example, it's like certain people can be vegetarians, and people kind of make a joke about it and it's fine. But like then when people go to the extent of vegan, there's people out there that get very passionate about it and argumentative. And it's just, I think, it's one of those arguments that could never end because you never know, where does the harm of animals end and begin? You don't know, so it's hard to know how to get into these very ambiguous and semantic based arguments. I don't know, but I think in the social media realm, which we're talking about, it seems much more obvious because you can just see that. Like you can just see that I follow this personality. I mean, I think it helps to give people examples because maybe we're out there just talking about this as a concept. I mean, this conversation sparked because Alex and I were talking about Mark Driscoll, and he's been widely
kind of making a resurgence due to social media, I would say.
Because I mean, I think the Mars Hill podcast probably did him more good than they thought it would. Of raising awareness of who he was.
The rise and fall of Mars Hill.
The rise and fall. And so I think from that, now his social media has really blown up again, and that's the thing. We were both talking about how we both follow him on social media because we're curious, like, what's he doing? What's going on? And then the conversation came to like, what do people, there's people we've seen who like his posts, and both of us are like, well, we're steering clear of that. We're not liking his posts. We're just kind of observing.
Don't accidentally tap.
But it's like, what does that mean? Because
right.
even at a heart level, I will hear him, like I'll watch sermon clips and I'll go, oh, that's rough. Oh, I don't really like what you're saying there. But then like, maybe 1 out of 5, I'm kind of like, oh, that's pretty convicting. That's actually kind of powerful. That's a good message. And it's just messy. It's paradoxical. And I think as humans, we hate paradox. We want things like you said, Jess, we want black and white, cut and dry, like just give it to me straight. I don't want to have to think about it, and I think it's really, really tough. I mean, you look at in the Bible, I look at like the Saul and Paul example, all the horrible things that Saul did, but then all the good that Paul did. Mm-hmm. And right. I mean, I know that's not a one-to-one example of anybody, and please don't hear me compare Paul to Mark Driscoll. I am not doing that, but I am just saying that even on the flip side of that, when we've talked about like Ravi Zachariah and like those things where someone has fallen out of grace, even maybe after they'd passed on, that doesn't discredit all the work that God did through them. It doesn't unsave the person that was reached for Christ because of the work that individual did. So sometimes I think the way God works, he just works in paradox and he operates in that realm, and we don't like it as Christians, but sometimes, hey, he's going to build his kingdom with or without us. And so like how that happens, we can get very legalistic about it, but sometimes it's just going to happen. And who he uses, I mean, if the Bible is any testament to the people he used to reach the lost, it's a pretty messy hodgepodge of characters.
Well, I think it gets more complex when you consider if somebody that has been hurt by, a misogynistic kind of leader, right. or someone has real traumas from, for example, purity culture and some of those things that have been put out there to some people that are looking at it, like I have been hurt by that person, or maybe not that person directly, but that entity and a lot of the things that they represent or the things that they have vocally or publicly endorsed. Mm. So then it comes to, is by me following this person and the people that I know and I love and I'm trying to shepherd, do they see me as putting salt on their wound,
that's a good point.
Or doing things that are hurtful to them by still in some way engaging with this person in some kind of way? And I think that's where it does get messy and tricky. And there's been instances where people have, brought, some of those things to my attention where they're like, yeah, but I was hurt by that person. And maybe not directly. Usually it's not a direct blow that specific person did to somebody, but they were hurt by their betrayal or the way that they've talked about women. I'm thinking Mark Driscoll, for example, is one of those people that there's a lot of damage and wake to. But then I, like you, Eric, I've seen some of the things that he's done, and I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't say it that way, but that's good truth, And that is where the paradoxical nature of that comes into play, which is into ethical and
I think we're using Mark Driscoll as a example, but you could fill in any controversial religious political leader. So for me, I feel like a really easy way to navigate this is if I see Eric or Alex or even myself, somebody that that follows this person, it's like, well, what else are they following? Mm-hmm. Like, who are they consuming? Because it's also that also plays into it. So to me, it's like a one-off person or something like that is one thing. But okay, is everything I see Eric liking super legalistic and that rubs me the wrong way? Yeah. Or is everything I see Alex liking super political and hearting? I mean, it's more than just a detail of one person. And so it's like, who are they consuming? And then that should make us turn around when we're looking at somebody else. You better look back in the mirror and say, well, who am I following? Like, who am I? What representation am I giving if that's what I'm noticing about one of my friends on social media or somebody that I follow?
Well, one of the other things that I don't think we've even considered in this conversation is what it means to different generations to follow somebody. I mean, I think when you're talking about Gen Z and younger, so much of their personality and who their identities are formed with their social media accounts and their profiles and what they're putting out there, and it means a lot more to them. Where to me, like as an elder millennial, I just always jumped on every social media as soon as it came out because it was like a fun thing. It was a toy to me. It was not something I took seriously. I was just like, oh, this is a place where I can, joke with my friends and post
Make
funny
my top
pictures.
8.
Yeah, so it was just like,
That takes me
but
back.
then you even look at older generations who might just see, a picture of Obi-Wan Kenobi that has like a Jesus quote under it and think it's a Jesus thing. And they're like, oh, I like that. And they might just follow that account. They have no idea who posted that, why they posted it, what the point of that is. And then all of a sudden that account's posting all this other stuff. And maybe they like that too. And they don't, or maybe it's starting to mold their worldview because of what's being posted. So I think you don't think about people's intentions as much. So I think for a younger generation, it may mean more. To an older generation, we keep using Mark Driscoll as an example. Older generation, they might not even know all the baggage with this guy.
True.
They're just like, oh, there's a preacher said something I like. I'm gonna follow that person. They have no idea who he is.
Or they're going to reference back to like 2008, 9, 10, Mark Driscoll, where it's like we're years later.
Yeah.
Like they're going to think back to.
Yeah, and they didn't know of all the baggage there. Right. So it is complex, and I do think it is generational too, because I don't think a follow to me would necessarily mean the same as a follow to someone of a younger or an older generation. But
and part of the conversation we had a couple weeks ago was talking about Elise Myers and even the whole watermelon movement, where there's certain people that I don't want to know their religious or political affiliation. Like I'm following them for
like
the content that they're putting out. And when they put some of that stuff out, especially if it's goes against my own political beliefs or my own religious beliefs, then there's something that happens in me because of my worldview that it makes me like them less, or makes me start to discredit them because I'm like, man, I love you. Mm-hmm. How could you? I thought you're awesome. I like all your stuff, and this has happened to me before where I have liked a lot of somebody's stuff. I've used their quotes in a sermon, like a Ravi Zacharias, for example, like you brought that up. And then I get in this quandary of, man, I've got all of these years of supporting this person and even pointing people to read their books and going through Bible studies that they've done. And then this thing comes up that is terrible or messy. And then we see all maybe the bodies that are left behind in the wake of all the trauma. And then you're left with this kind of, man, this whole time I've been, and I've been an apologist for that person. And then you get into some of that mess too. And so there's a lot of people that I'm like, I don't want to know that about you, because then it puts me in this, it makes you responsible. It makes, in some ways, feel the responsibility or the weight or the ethical dilemma that comes along with it.
It's like I think of Kanye West. Yeah, like it wasn't that long ago that he released a gospel album, and I think a lot of Christians tuned in for that and probably followed him on social media and were hopeful to see God do a work in his life. And then now he's definitely moved away from that, and has talked about how cool he thinks Hitler is and other pretty horrible things. And it's just, are people always quick to go unfollow either? They might have followed him back during the Jesus is King days and never thought about it again. And then, maybe they're seeing content and just kind of ignoring it. I don't know, but it's still one of those things that it's so nuanced that I would hope nobody makes that quick of a decision on somebody based on who they follow.
Or do I need to equally condemn?
Yeah.
Once I've equally platformed or raised up that person, once they do flip, do I need to just be as vocal about
how bad they are?
Condemnation, not even towards them, but their content at that. Yeah. And I felt that definitely several times where somebody's, I have enjoyed, maybe their policies and politics or their book or whatever, and then something crazy happens, and then I'm like, should I meet that because people know that I like them. People know that I've represented them. People know that I've platformed them. Do I need to equally let all my followers now know, or do I just kind of let it, I've run into, some of those own things, especially from the church, because sometimes I think we can't get away. And I think we've all been in this situation here on the podcast where, we have our disclaimer on the podcast that this does not represent Christ Community Church or our beliefs, our belief statements. And yet there's people that have listened to the podcast that have gone to other leaders and things like that and have assumed, things about us personally because of things we've said, or the church at large because of things that we've said, or because of things that I've posted on my own social media or scriptures or whatever. There becomes this Alex is endorsing this, and therefore because Alex is endorsing this is an endorsement of Christ Community Church, or probably for you in City Care or anybody else, kind of their job, like, is my personal thought about this person or sharing this and then a blanketed endorsement of all of the organizations that I love and I represent and things like that, which is why there's these disclaimers on almost any podcaster.
Yeah.
Like, we have to lead with those disclaimers in some ways as well.
I just think about the life of Jesus and just look at the disciples that he kept around him. It's like Jesus shared space with Matthew, like a tax collector, and he was a not well-liked individual. And how we could make assumptions like, well, because Jesus, like, he made Matthew one of the 12 disciples. I'm just picking on Matthew, but we could say, well, Jesus, like, he endorses all the things that Matthew did and the way he's treated people and what he's done. And when I think about it like that, and we know the heart of Jesus and the way that he leads us, and I think that we would know, like, no, he didn't endorse those things. But I think there's a way to share space and to share something with people and to not endorse what they're doing, like, and to not be associated with it. And that's the part where it's like the uncomfortable, like, what does that look like for us as believers? So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jesus, he takes the heart and like what we're consuming and things like that pretty seriously. And I mean, Paul talks about this over and over, and he steals it from Jesus in his letters about what we consume, whatever. He talks about this in Philippians 4, whatever's lovely, whatever's pure, whatever's holy, whatever's righteous, whatever's admirable. Consider these things. And, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, Jesus says. And so undoubtedly the things that we're taking in through social media, do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, Romans 12, but be transformed, metamorphoed, like a butterfly metamorphosis by the renewing of your mind. And so I think there has to be some kind of gauging of how is this, even when I'm following people that are maybe anti-Christian, quote unquote, or not followers of Jesus, how am I letting that affect me? I think is something that we definitely have to ask, because sometimes, honestly, I do it because it's a train wreck and it's entertaining, and that's not good. Like, for me, following someone that I've seen as a train wreck and to see the next crazy thing that they're going to do and just be able to share that with people and kind of make fun of them and laugh about it in my own circles. Like, that's not setting me up in a good posture to be consuming things for the right reason, to not see that person as a human made in the image of God. And it starts to deteriorate my thoughts of an image bearer of Christ. And it gives me permission. Ultimately, it becomes selfish because it gives me permission to feel better about myself because I'm not the train wreck that they are. And then when I start to do that, then I stop looking internally at the train wreck that I can be. And I use everybody else's hot mess and mistakes and following them as kind of a guise for why I don't need to do internal work. And so I'm not saying that is a blanketed statement, but I've found myself in moments where I've gone down that path, and it leads me to no self-reflection or my own need to be accountable to anything because, well, I'm doing better than them. And I think that's where I've had to catch myself in some of those moments and even unfollow some of those people, because I know I'm literally doing it out of malice or out of selfish ambition. And that's not, we talked about this recently at church. That's not what love is. It's me I'm doing it to keep record of wrongs.
Yeah.
And that's not what love is. And so that is where I think some of those spiritual things really do come into play from a discipleship point of view. And it's not a prescriptive thing for everybody.
I think there's probably two camps of people who cannot stand to be outside of the inside joke, and people who don't mind not being included in the inside joke. You know what I mean? You've been in those friend groups where maybe you have an inside joke and there's that person's like, what are you guys talking about? What does that mean? I want in on this. What are you talking about? What's the joke? And then other times maybe they're just like, okay, that's just them, whatever. And I think I find myself much more in the camp of like, I want to be in on the inside joke. And I think a lot of social media is, especially if you look at like TikTok, it could be one little trend that starts, that morphs into another thing, that morphs into another thing, and if you're not like in on the first one, you're not going to have the point of context to be able to laugh at the 10th iteration of this joke, And so I've just always been a culture absorber. Like I thrive off that. I like knowing that and connecting with others who are also that way, and whether that's to laugh about or to start a conversation or whatever that might be. That's just kind of the way I'm wired. I think about like when Apple Music or Spotify started making it more social, and you could have friends, and then they could see what you're listening to, and people started having these conversations about, oh, okay, well, man, I got to be careful who's seeing what I'm listening to, and that sort of stuff. And it's like, to me, I've always just been very bold there and just gone, okay. Like, I mean, yeah, people might judge that, but if I've listened to something that they think is bad, I would love to have that conversation, no matter where it went. If you think you felt called to rebuke me in that moment, then let's have that conversation, because I would be curious to hear your reasoning, and it's like, I would definitely invite that conversation, but I think sometimes people wouldn't, and that's okay too. But I mean, at the end of the day, just to what you're asking, I guess I look at my faith as something extremely serious and personal, something I take serious. But I would say it's in a list of very few things that I take that serious. And I'm not to say that I'm making light of anything else. It's just that I can't go through life and just be like, oh, you know what that person did? Oh, you know what that person did? Oh, you know what like, this is so terrible. And it's just I just couldn't do that. Like, I can't carry all that weight. And so like, sometimes my way of dealing with it is maybe making light of a situation. But I'm also just so curious that I'm going to be following everything I can just because I want to know. And I feel like if I know, maybe someone might say that's part of my, like, I have control issues or something. I want to be able to control everything around me. But I also think it's just, I like to know what's going on. I like to be informed. I want to make educated decisions. If someone ever brings up a conversation, I want to be able to speak into it in a way that I don't feel like I'm just saying what the whole crowd is saying, but I'm also like, I'm saying something that I'm convicted about, or I won't speak into it if I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's so nuanced to me. And I think, like you said, Alex, I'm feeling that too, that weight of like, man, I have definitely judged people based on like posts they've liked and stuff like that, and I think, that's not good. But yeah, I don't know. Applying wisdom is important to this, but I don't know. I think it's going to be different for everyone's personal journey.
For me, as we've had this conversation, I've felt a subtle conviction, or maybe I'm just trying to keep it subtle, of how I've done that, and how I do judge people by their actions and myself by my intentions. So I definitely follow people that I disagree with, but there's people I can think of them. I picture their faces in my mind where I'm like, I have made some pretty strong, bold judgments interpersonally, and maybe even shared them in a joking manner with others about it. Yeah. And like you, Eric, I would want somebody to, if they had those thoughts, to come and help me understand conversation. Yeah. Because I think I would be able to, I'm confident that I'd be able to explain, and at the end of the day, or maybe I would learn something from their perspective that I hadn't considered. Yeah. And that would be just as valuable to me. But I'm very probably too cowardice in doing that. In my ability to do that, and becoming too quickly too wanting to judge too quickly there. And so it's a good reminder for me too.
Yeah.
That I do judge others by their actions and myself by my intentions, and very, very too often. And so it's a good reminder for me of like, okay, maybe I've taken this too far in other people's, and maybe there's some conversations or questions, help me understand questions that, because almost every time I've actually done that, it's been fruitful. Mm-hmm. And I get to know somebody more. I get to hear again. We talk about being in proximity to people helps change not our positions, but our posture. And so I think that's a good reminder through this conversation as well.
Yeah. And I think it's important as humans to fight our instinct to make things one like black and white. It's tough. I know it's tough, but when even if just to use politics as an example, when you look at that, and I think this came up in last week's episode when listening to it, there are things as a Christian and a believer that I can align with on the left and the right. And so if that's true of me as a Christ follower, then, that makes it messy. That makes it more challenging than just having an identity as a Republican or a Democrat or whatever conversation we're having. There's a lot we can learn from everyone. And like, if we're not talking about it and we're just, like we said, sitting back and judging, then we're not going to grow from it either. Mm-hmm. So
one thing that is helpful for me when I'm like either consuming of some kind of, maybe I see somebody do something on social media or otherwise, one thing that's really helpful for me is if I don't understand or I don't understand you or why you're doing something, I have to reserve judgment. I have to reserve some judgment because I don't understand. Yeah. And so for me, I have made it like a practice that I just naturally will think that, but that had to be something that I like wrote down and remembered, because even as a therapist, it's like, I don't understand the different ways that people are coming at things or how they got to where they're at. Mm-hmm. But man, I think that Jesus does that too, where it's just like, that's to me, at least like where in my spiritual journey, like I've gotten to where it's like, I don't understand, even if we're talking about like Eric and Alex following Mark Driscoll, it's as serious as like somebody having an abortion or somebody choosing to post a video, something like that. But I don't understand. Mm-hmm. And part of me can judge like an issue or maybe a group of words, but I have to reserve some of my like judgment. I can't give it full. And so that's like uncomfortable, like wrestling that I've had to do in my own journey.
Mm-hmm. Takes discipline. That takes work. Yeah. It's not natural, because I think the instinct is I want to jump to conclusions.
That's probably
and judge.
like 5 years of work that I can even like say that I'm like I can process that way.
Yeah, that's tough.
And the Holy Spirit probably working in your life, because it's not a natural thing for us to do. So it's inviting the Spirit to see people and to do things differently. So that's good, Jess.
Now, I will say sharing somebody's content, now that might be a little more of an endorsement. You know what I mean?
Retweets, all those kind of things. Same. But we like when people share our content.
It's true. It's true. Or if they comment, wow, this was great, or why did you say that? I didn't like that. No, but yeah, it's a good conversation. But if you do want to reach out to us, we would highly encourage that. And if you want to endorse us on Instagram or TikTok, you can do that at CCCOMA Podcast. CC Omaha on YouTube. If you want to watch, if you're not watching these and you want to watch them, we post the video format there. If you're only an audio listener, but yeah, anywhere you're at, comment. And if you can't comment because maybe you're listening to this on iTunes, send us an email to podcast@cccoma.org or cccomaha.org, or you can leave us a voicemail 402-885-9930. But until next time, we'll talk to you then.